Hi again, everyone, and welcome to Badger Breakdown. I'm Mike Lucas for UWBadgers.com. I'm joined by Matt Lepay, the voice of the Badgers. I've got to admit, I was surprised by the outcome in West Lafayette. Figured it'd be a close game. I was wrong, pleasantly so.
I'm right there with you. I thought it might be a game that comes down to a kick even. Purdue, even though it didn't play well defensively against Michigan, it just seemed to be a better matchup schematically playing a team like Wisconsin, and the Badgers rolled all over them. Now, in Wisconsin, to its credit, overcame a terrible start, big kick return, long play, quick touchdown for Purdue, but Badgers had a quick answer, and Purdue never counter-punched after Wisconsin got to them.
All season long, we have been advising you not to rush to judgment. Give it time. Let it breathe. We probably have to follow that after such a convincing victory.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's kind of funny how it works. It's what's wrong with Monte Ball? And now Monte Ball's right there in the Heisman chase. It's how it works. And if he can keep putting up 247 yards, absolutely, that's going to happen. But I think in the Big Ten, especially this year, Mike, we've seen teams. One week we think Michigan is really good, the next week not so much. Ohio State really good, next week not so much. It hasn't lost yet, but it hasn't always looked pretty, talking about Ohio State. With Wisconsin, it looked pretty for the most part against Purdue last week. Now you want to see if the Badgers can do it again and again. Who in this league is going to be able to sustain a high level of play?
I think we all assumed that given time, that the offensive line would take steps, whether they be baby steps or strides. And we've seen that incrementally since we had Bart Miller take over the O-line, and he was put in charge, and guys were starting to do things that they were more familiar with.
And what was really encouraging, especially last week, Mike, was that the offense continued to click with an injury and with some line shuffling going on. When Ricky Wagner went down, you're talking about a very highly touted left tackle. The NFL scouts, Brett's talked about it all year, been really impressed with Ricky, and they're really intrigued with him. But when he went down, Ryan Groy, who didn't take many reps, but they just in case, they got him a little bit ready last week. He slides to left tackle. Zach Matthias pops in, and they're still able to produce the way the Badgers produced on the ground.
I think we were both in agreement on this when Bob Bostat was the coach. The ability to adjust on the fly and the versatility of his linemen. And I suppose we shouldn't be surprised that there's a continuation now with Bart.
Yeah, it was fun to watch. I mean, you think of last year with Ryan Groy and Travis Frederick when they had to switch spots in the middle of the Illinois game, and they switched guard tackle or guard center positions during the course of the game, and Wisconsin was able to really get rolling after they flipped spots. And I guess there's enough of that Bostat influence. You've talked to Bart Miller, I've talked to Bart Miller, all of us around the program have, and it's evident. And I think in talking to some of the linemen, Bart Miller has been there long enough now that the players are settling in, if that's the right way to put it. They know what Bart wants. They know how he wants it done. And so far, so good. You just want to see now if that can continue.
And everybody is aware of the long, long history of the border battle between Minnesota and Wisconsin, but I've got to be honest with you. This is game, 122, and I know less about the Gophers today than I have in many of the other years.
I think the one thing that we can say about Minnesota is that it's getting better defensively. They had a really bad start last week against Northwestern. Special teams contributed to that. But in the last two games, Minnesota, in the game that there were losses, but at Iowa and to Northwestern in the second half, Minnesota's defense allowed less than 100 yards of total offense. So it's better. But the Gophers, they've had some injury issues, both sides of the ball. The quarterback, Marquise Gray, has had a very hard time staying healthy. So that's probably been part of why the Gophers have been spinning their wheels a little bit here in the last couple of weeks.
Brett Bielema doesn't like to talk about streaks, winning streaks, okay? But this is one streak that everybody around here wants to extend. It's 8 and counting.
It is, and it's a big deal. You hear the term, it's not much of a rivalry. It is. It becomes a rivalry when you watch the other guys come across the field and get the axe. Wisconsin's players out there haven't had to experience the other guys doing that, and they do make a big deal out of this trophy game. The kids from Minnesota and Wisconsin know about it. The kids who aren't learn about it in a big hurry.
Last week we talked about not assuming anything after the Purdue game. If Wisconsin would win, don't just think that they're going to get to Indy. The Badgers are now in the driver's seat, but they still have work to do.
They do, and you want to be able to get it without the asterisk. You want to be able to get, and if you don't, the way it works out, you take it, you don't apologize. But they control their own destiny to get there via all the tiebreakers right now. And Brett won't go that far, but we're not coaching, so we can look ahead a little bit. But But it just goes back to what we were talking about before, though. This team played really well last week. You want to see them play really well again in a rivalry game. And then Michigan State comes here. Then you get some time off, and then you get ready for the big push in November. But it's about putting two good games together.
I don't know if it's possible to keep getting better. You'd like to think it is. And that's all the coaching staff wants to see now. Get it a little bit better from week to week. Whatever that means, they'll define it on their own.
I thought last week when Purdue scored late, now it was against a lot of the second group, but as upset, I think, as the coaches were, maybe that's not a bad thing. It keeps you maybe a little bit on edge against a Gopher team that, look, if Minnesota comes in here and beats Wisconsin, probably made its season to a great extent. So I think if you're the Badgers, you're the one with the target right now, and understand that. I think these guys, to their credit, have handled all that pretty well. This is just another big test on Saturday.
You want to keep the chip on the shoulder, don't you?
History tells us they do pretty well with that
That's
chip.
the way you earn respect.
Absolutely, absolutely.
For Matt Lepay, I'm Mike Lucas. Thanks for watching Badger Breakdown on UWBadgers.com.